Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/TSE. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Check it out again, audibletrial.com/TSE. Hey, it's from your boy Donald Kelly. Merry Christmas. You guys ready for a good show today? I said you guys ready for a good show today? Oh, yeah, lady up there in the balcony. I see you. All right, we got a great guest coming on the show today. Let's dive into the episode. Take it away, Mr. MC. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you. And actually, 1 week from today, we'll be having our Christmas celebration. It'll be a Christmas day. So, I'm so excited for that. So excited to the opportunity to be here with you guys as well. And just grateful for another wonderful year and that I had the opportunity to connect with you and to gain some new friendships. Speaking about new friendships, I got to give some shout outs today. Want to give a big shout out today to Pete Ryan. I'm excited to connect with you. Andre, I look forward to connect with you. Thanks for the comment and the message on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to send an answer back to that question. Also want to give a big shout out this week to John Santiago. Thank you so much, John, for the connection. And I know you're going to keep being awesome. And I also want to give a big shout out to Javon and also to Kendra. Thank you guys also for connecting. I appreciate it. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can go ahead and find me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly. You can find me on Twitter, Donald C. Kelly. You can also connect with me on Instagram, Donald C. Kelly. I do some motivational posts and so forth to get a chance to see behind the scenes here as well. And you can connect with me on Facebook to see more pictures and things of that nature. Like our Facebook page, it'll be a great Christmas gift. It's the Sales Evangelist, and invite others to check it out. You can also check out our private Facebook group. It's for sellers, entrepreneurs just like you. And I know you've heard me talk about it, so now jump on it and just go to Facebook, search for the Sales Evangelizers. I'll wait. Yep, search for the Sales Evangelizers and join the group. Jump in on the conversations. They're very informative. I mean, there's some really interesting things that people ask, some really great discussions that are going on, great dialogues, and a great way to connect and have some accountability with some other friends. And it's awesome to see more of the listeners. I mean, it's cool to be able to chat with you, but when people are able to reach back out and connect with me, that's awesome. So let's make this a two-sided relationship. Join TSE, the Sales Evangelizers. It's awesome. It's a Facebook group again. And I'd love to connect with you there. And also, if you want to take your sales to another level this year, you got to check out TSE Hustlers League. Just go to the salesevangelist.com/hustlers. Salesevangelist.com/hustlers. Our guest today is Tim Riesterer. Tim is the co-author of a book. It's really awesome. It's actually called 3 Value Conversations. And they broke down the sales process and found out 3 areas where salespeople are having the toughest time. And they just they wrote a book on it, and it's awesome the way that they just have everything broken up and the sections, and it's just easy to comprehend. And I think it's a game changer when it comes to salespeople mastering their craft. I highly recommend it. We're going to discuss it, so let's dive into the episode. Again, 3 Value Conversations. Let's check it out. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Hey, Donald. Thanks for having me.
I'm stoked to have you here, man. This book is phenomenal, and I'm going to post a little bit more about it. I spoke about it at the top of the hour, but it's 3 value conversations, and I love the fact that you guys outlined the book in a way that it speaks to the average seller like myself. I have been selling for quite some time, and I think you and your co-authors did a phenomenal job to set this up to address some of the needs that we have as sellers and to help us increase our productivity and our sales. So thank you for putting this together.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, a lot of salespeople hope that their product will be different and unique enough and kind of sell itself in a way, and you can go about the job of just connecting to the right people. But what we discovered is the value is really created when salespeople's lips move, because so many products and services are so similar that I like to say the last bastion of competitive differentiation is a salesperson still today with their lips moving.
And I had a discussion recently. I think we talked about it on a show maybe about 6 months back, but I've had conversations with friends about how we have this online space and how a lot of people are going to the online space to purchase things. But just like what you said, there are certain things you can't just go and look at and say, let me just buy that. you need that added component of the value from a salesperson, a human being, right?
Well, especially in business to business, which is where a lot of this plays, but anything with a considered purchase time frame where someone has to have multiple conversations to think about their problem, really reflect on the solution, and then decide, a salesperson still adds a ton of value in those circumstances, and people still admit their reliance upon the salesperson to make sense, make meaning out of all the information that's being thrown at them.
And that is why they are a professional. At least the good ones are.
Yeah, they understand that they have to bring something else to the conversation than being the product expert anymore, because you're never as up to date as your website is. And you got to bring more to the conversation than creating relationships, because so many B2B decisions require multiple buying influences that you can't have that many relationships. You really actually have to be more effective at driving the conversation, guiding the conversation. And that becomes the professional keystone to your success, is literally the conversation that you have.
So true. Now, let's talk about the naming of that, actually. Why did you guys name the book the way you did?
So the 3 value conversations was identified. I would say it's simple once you figure it out, but not at first. We looked at the pain points, like the inflection points in a buying cycle or sales process, where salespeople get stuck. If you look at their CRM, you can see groups of salespeople clustering in one of, or two of, or 3 problem areas. One is creating enough pipeline. You have to create enough value so that people are willing to make a change, do something different, and create a sales opportunity together. Not enough people create enough pipeline. The second point things get stuck is at the proposal stage. A lot of people putting out a lot of proposals, and those proposals dying. They go to no decision or status quo. And we talk about the idea that you have to build a significant enough business case to pass muster with today's executive buyer to break through that challenge of status quo stalled deals. And then the third point is margins and profit. People getting beat up on price because everything looks and sounds and smells the same. The customer has all the power, and so salespeople are struggling to hold the line on price and profit and margin. So creating enough pipe, getting over the hurdle of proposals and closing more deals, and then doing it more profitably. Those are the 3 value conversation inflection points. So we built a book that covers all 3, so it's broken into 3 parts, and those are the 3 we cover.
Man, I love it. Love that. Let's break them down, because you're speaking to my heart here, man. This is good stuff. Let's talk about the first one, creating enough pipeline. What are some of the things that you guys recommend to help salespeople create enough pipeline?
Well, the first problem that we've discovered is that your traditional competitor is not your arch rival enemy company across the hall or across town. Your biggest rival is do nothing status quo, getting someone to reconsider their status quo. And we talk about how to overcome the bias towards not changing or the bias towards status quo, and how salespeople have to dislodge or unhinge the status quo. In other words, you actually have to be able to destabilize people's preferences and help them see there's a need for change and a need to do something different before you can tell them they need you. And over 60% of qualified pipeline at the end of a deal cycle ends up making no decision. They stick with their status quo. They put everybody through their paces and then go, I think I'm okay. So problem number 1 is you actually have to get people to commit to change. And doing that is way different than traditionally differentiating yourself from your competitors.
Interesting. One of the things I found to be very important too is, and I think you kind of alluded to this, is just really understanding who you're going after. I mean, how much does that play in this whole process?
Well, understanding who you go after is vitally important, because you lots of times you think you're going after a person in a role with a title, and you're supposed to speak specifically to their role and their responsibility. And when you go after the status quo, you're actually going after the situation they're in. We talk a lot about the decision-making sciences, and there's an idea inside of behavioral economics called fundamental attribution error, where we attribute people's behaviors and their decision or a no decision to change, we attribute it to their disposition, who they are and who we think their character is. And we underestimate the impact of their situation, when in reality, people's situation is what typically causes them to think about change and typically drives their behavior. So when we talk about who to go after, we actually talk about what to go after. Look at their current state, what they're doing today in their current situation, and look for the gaps and deficiencies in their situation. Don't target necessarily who they are and what they have to accomplish, because most people will change because they got to fix their situation, not because of who they are and what they do. The other thing we found about titles is companies vest power differently in different titles, so you never really know which title will rule the day. But all of the titles you target do have to make their situation better, and they all share the same situation. So identify the gaps and deficiencies in the situation, their current status quo, and message to that, as opposed to all the different personas you might encounter.
You mentioned the idea also of buying vision. What is that exactly?
Yeah, so executive buyers admit that they give their business to the company or brand that helps them create a buying vision. And what that means is essentially this. There are really two, maybe three major decisions a customer has to make. Why should I change? Why should I do it now? And why should I do it with you? And the buying vision is the why should I change and why should I do it now? What's wrong with what I'm doing today and why should I have any sense of urgency? The person who can engage a customer prospect to talk about why they need to change and why there's some sense of urgency behind that, literally creating the vision to buy or do something different or new, that person's going to win 74% of the time, according to the research. And so if you want to wait to come in late after all that's been done, you have a 1 in 4 chance of winning. So if you want to increase your odds, be the one who engages in the why change, why now conversation, and you will significantly increase your odds of winning. We call that creating the buying vision.
You also mentioned previously, just to double back, the idea of essentially, I'm just going to paraphrase it, but when you speak to situations, like really understanding a situation, what would you recommend? Because I'm sure in your research you figured out some things salespeople do, or how some sales professionals who are successful are able to do that so much easier. Is it through the questioning, or are they asking like the end users first and then they go to the decision makers? Or what are your thoughts, or what are some of your feedback from your research?
Well, from some of our research, we recommend that this sort of become a proactive sort of exercise that companies can go through. The truth of the matter is, every customer thinks they're different, but not every customer is different. Customers and targets kind of cluster in what I call status quo profiles. So, for example, you might have somebody who their status quo is they just purchased something similar to what you offer within the last year or two. And then you have those who might have purchased something similar to what you offer in the last 5 to 10 years. And then you have people who are doing it themselves or not really solving this problem with some of the latest approaches. So those might be 3 buckets. People who are doing it on recipe cards, people who bought 10-year-old technology, and people who just bought technology recently, for example. You would approach each of those situations or status quos differently with your messaging. And sometimes what I believe is that companies overestimate how different customers are, and they think, I got to figure out what this customer's problem is, and then reinvent the story every time. When in reality, you could probably come up with maybe 3 or 4 types of clusters that say a lot of people fall into this bucket or this bucket or this bucket, and then narrow your approach and say, when I encounter somebody in bucket A, this is the story I should tell. But if I find out they're in bucket B, this is the story I should tell. So what you really do is probing for which card in the deck you should play, as opposed to everything being a start from scratch scenario. I'm not saying that later in the sales cycle you don't start to tailor and configure. You always do. But early on, when you're trying to create a buying vision, you're trying to uncover or identify which of these buckets a prospect or customer fits in, and then how you would lead that story. And that, to me, is an effort to put your best story together for each of those profiles, and then know which card to play when you encounter that type of customer or prospect. And I think you'll gain efficiency and productivity by identifying situations and status quo profiles and pre-building your best approach to each one. You might have just 3 or 4. It's not a never-ending list. So I think it's actually a good proactive exercise for companies.
In the chapter 3, you guys mentioned the concept of, let me just read it exactly. I have my book here. I love it. I have some stuff marked. The unconsidered needs drive unexpected opportunities. What do you mean by that, Tim?
So the thing that we have discovered is that asking questions of customers or doing voice of the customer research and then mapping your capabilities to what you find out. So we call that the identified, known, or considered need being mapped to the obvious, appropriate capability would seem like the right place to create a solution, tell a story, and have a value proposition. But pretty much that's 20 years ago. Everybody's finding and uncovering the known customer needs. And when you map your capabilities, often many people are mapping from similar portfolios because we know many things are becoming sort of commoditized. So your story is also becoming commoditized. So the thing that you have to do to really distinguish yourself anymore is tell them something they didn't already know about a problem or opportunity they didn't know they had. And that's called the unconsidered need. The reason that's important is twofold. One, it creates a sense of urgency. The thing they didn't know or didn't see coming is the thing that causes them to feel a little bit more urgent about solving the problem. Because the known problems haven't killed them yet. They're not dead yet. They know they're getting a paycheck. They know the lights are on. The company's not going under. So the urgency sometimes in the known identified need is what causes deals to go long. What you have to do is create some urgency, inspire some urgency, and introduce something they maybe hadn't thought of, a problem or missed opportunity. The second thing it does is it opens up an opportunity to introduce uniqueness. There are often capabilities and where you're unique or advantaged that you can't get into that first story where they have identified a need and you've introduced a capability to match that. All of a sudden you find there's all these strengths laying out here that don't fit that story. And too many companies try to shoehorn those into the story and call them value-added services, which only adds complexity and a sense of higher cost. So what we recommend is you've got these unknown strengths that don't get into the story, map those back to these unconsidered needs. And that's where your true breakthrough in terms of urgency, the unconsidered need, didn't see that coming, and uniqueness, the unknown strength that you can map to resolve the risk created by this unconsidered need. So your real story, the real opportunity to differentiate yourself lives in the unconsidered need leading to the unknown strength, as opposed to the identified, diagnosed problem leading to a similar set of capabilities as everybody else.
Now, one of the sections of the book, you guys talked about the idea of whiteboard versus PowerPoint. I'm sure you have some reasonings for this or some kind of studies that kind of emphasize your point. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, there's certainly a study that we did with Stanford University that I can talk about real quickly, and then I just want to talk philosophically about what salespeople want to be when they're in front of a customer and what portrays that better, a marker or a clicker. So PowerPoint being represented by the clicker and whiteboards by the marker. So real quickly, the study, we built a story. And we told this story the same way. In fact, we created video presentations that we tested with over 400 people. And in one, and real quickly, the story was the same for all three of the tests. We just cut and paste the audio. All that changed was the video. And in one video, the story was told by a whiteboard visual animating. Simple, something that could be drawn, not like the fancy pants whiteboard we see in videos online, but something that an actual human being could draw to tell a story, just a couple numbers, a few stick figures, and a few squiggly lines. And then we cut and paste the audio and changed the video, which were bullet points and stock photography, not unlike a lot of current PowerPoints that salespeople present. Bullet points and simple bullet points, not too many, nice piece of stock photography. And then in the third condition was the same story, but we used just a large image, a metaphorical image with just a couple words on it, which is kind of the new wave, the new vogue in PowerPoint. And we told the same story, though, every time, and the visual just changed. It was a whiteboard version of the story, the bullet point version of the story, and the big metaphorical image version of the story. And we divided our 400 people into three equal groups, and we tested the whole thing. And in a double-digit statistical significance, people could recall and remember more completely and accurately the whiteboard version. And it was also seen to have greater impact and be more persuasive in terms of people changing and people recommending the things you want them to do in a sales cycle. And we tested it right after they viewed it, and then we went back to all three audiences 2 days later, and all these differences persisted. The visual story told in simple, concrete graphics outperformed traditional PowerPoint. Now, that's pretty powerful stuff in the test itself. If you're looking for an incremental edge, maybe a whiteboard style visual, which was even deemed more credible by the viewers. That was the most interesting thing. I hear salespeople say, I can't do a whiteboard in front of an executive and draw stick figures. I need a professional PowerPoint. Well, the study I hear it all the time. We don't want to do caveman drawings. And so the study proved that actually people felt the presenter and the content was more credible in the whiteboard version. So here's my point. Think of a clicker in one hand and a marker in the other hand. And if you're a salesperson who wants to be seen as different, more engaging, more remarkable and memorable than your competitors, are you going to get that if you go in and click a clicker or maybe engage with a marker in your hand and do something on a whiteboard or a flip chart? Or if you say, I want to be a trusted advisor, I don't want to be a transactional seller, I want to add value in a way that they see me as a partner, not a vendor. Well, which one's going to come across that way when you're in a room with a customer? Engaging with a marker or clicking through a PowerPoint. So I could go on and on with these compare and contrast, but most of the things salespeople believe themselves to be or want to be, I do believe could be portrayed better in the room if you could engage in a conversation with a marker versus a presentation with a clicker.
And I think with the marker too, it seems like you know more because you are presenting it right now. And I think that's one of the things that came out of the study. Like if I was to have the PowerPoint, my marketing folks could have put this PowerPoint together and I could have just memorized the slides. But if I'm writing out a stick figure and saying based on this percentage goes down, it shows that I actually know my stuff. This person is knowledgeable. That's one of the initial things I got from just like looking over this chapter and going through it. It makes so much sense.
You know what it does once you start to look at it in this rearview mirror. If you want credibility, you want to be seen as the one who's in command and owns the story and the solution, the one who gets up on the whiteboard and appears to spontaneously draw it. We also recommend pre-building many of your whiteboards to the business issues and status quos we talked about earlier. But the one who commands the marker will be seen as having credibility and ownership of the story as opposed to just jockeying the clicker. It's like being the jockey with a clicker versus being the horse with the marker. Who's really getting the job done?
I have the switch, man. Come on.
There you go.
Now, there's another thing that I loved with the book, and I had one of my other friends on a podcast. We chat about this maybe like 8-9 months ago now, but the idea though of understanding finances, it's appalling how many times a salesperson doesn't really understand how a business truly makes money. I mean, why did you guys spend so much time I think the whole section 2 kind of goes over some of that. Like why is that so important?
Yeah, so we talk about create value and then we talk about elevate value. The research shows that 80% of B2B sales require now or include a VP level or higher signature. But we've also done some research on companies out there and looked at their CRM systems to look at salespeople's opportunities. And the question we ask in the opportunity, when we looked at the opportunity, is what percentage of opportunities actually have a VP level or higher contact associated with that opportunity? On average at companies, we see only 10% of opportunities actually have identified and documented in their CRM a VP or level higher contact. Yet 80% of deals require a VP level contact to sign off. So we talk about this, that salespeople tend to have a fear of heights, selling high. And so we spent an entire section of the book not trying to create an MBA in one section of a book, but make you really smart in terms of getting a great return for effort, knowing how to pinpoint your story against those things in the way money flows in a company that you can address and attach your solution to. So it's not finance for dummies. It is literally salespeople. Here's where your story has to land for an executive to care. And let's give you a few simple tools to gain the buyer's perspective, to understand where to do the research for the maximum amount of return for effort, how to build an ROI that passes reasonable muster, and how to show the clear business change and improvement that your solution will impact. And so again, I believe it's absolutely approachable and it's documented and proven. That section was co-written by a former COO who has brought together 36 former C-level executives who have all signed multi-million-dollar contracts with salespeople to build a simple story and section around the material content that a salesperson needs to know. Nobody expects a salesperson to come in and be a CFO, but they expect you to, if you will, be able to hang in the room. We always say, otherwise you get delegated to who you sound like. And you want to be able to hang in the room.
And I think that makes sense. It ties into the other idea of, really understanding the customer or the customer insight before you get with them. And I feel a little bit more personal. I don't know, like, even if you've sold to other companies before and your product has been around for a while, but if you can't just like speak to me and relate to me, it just makes a big difference compared to the guy who can say, yeah, I understand that this is this and that is that and how this may help with this. If you can give me some of those details, then I'm like, okay, this guy knows about, the troubles I face as the CFO in this company, or knows about the troubles I face when, with our operation, and can really help us. I recognize the value in this. And somebody else could be selling the same exact thing, but not saying that. And I may not feel as comfortable with them.
Well, you know what? When all things are considered equal, I do believe that sometimes the best story told the best will win. And that's what happens in this scenario. Everybody's products kind of look the same, but you've made some connection points that make that person feel like you understand what they're trying to accomplish, and you've made enough of a connection back to what they're trying to accomplish that they sense you get them. And a lot of it in this section is about that. Because the stats that we show from a research perspective is that executive buyers value a salesperson who brings some business knowledge, some industry intelligence, and can connect emerging issues to their strategic initiatives. They value that 4 times more than the person who can be the product expert and bring the relationship capability. 4 times more, not 4%, not 40%, 4 times more they value that kind of engagement. So you can't deny that. And so now you got to figure out how to be that. So we hope that, this section of the book really helps them gain more confidence as well as competence in that dialogue.
As we get ready to wrap up, because I can sit here and probably ask about 50 more questions, but I won't. I understand your time. But one of the things as we get ready to wrap up, I wanted to chat about was like the last section of your book. And I'm really curious about the idea of the pivotal argument. Can you speak to that first a little bit?
Yeah, so it's pivotal agreement.
Excuse me.
I think what you're trying to avoid
pivotal agreement.
So I think it was a Freudian slip. Here's what happens is salespeople get asked for things all throughout the sales cycle or buying process, and these things are valuable. But the salesperson wants to give those to the customer because they think it's evidence or proof that the deal is moving forward, that they're asking for these things. And so they're saying, wow, the customer asked me for references, that this deal must be moving forward. Or the customer asked me for pricing. We must be really in a deal here. Or the customer asked me for a pilot or proof of concept. These are very expensive proof points, and they have value. But the exchange is not fair. If you just give these things to the customer, in exchange, you just believe they're moving the deal forward when in reality they might not be. Pivotal agreements say that these are pivotal moments in every deal cycle where you're going to get asked for this, and you should use it as a moment to gain agreement for something you need in exchange. A value-based exchange. You're giving something of value, so you need to acknowledge it, but you need something back. And we tell companies they need to identify those key things they know they need, that you need to get a deal done, and you need to get a deal done well, and a deal done profitably, and a deal done in your favor. So if somebody says, I need some references, the dialogue can be absolutely, but references are expensive proof points. When you become a great customer of ours, you don't want us just willy-nilly handing out your name. So here's what we'd like to do. In exchange for that, what we found is we like and need certain information to tailor and customize our proposals. So we'd like these analytics and these data points to help us fashion a proposal that's more meaningful to you, and seems like that would be something that would be worth then giving you some reference checks because we're each getting something of value. Now, that might not be the exact way you deliver it, but my point is, these moments are pivotal, and gaining a certain agreement is something that will move the deal forward. But you can't just move the deal forward by giving the thing away and believing the customer is advancing the deal. You need to ask for things that you need that will also advance the deal from your perspective. These are agreements. You should know ahead of time what they're going to ask for, and you should know ahead of time what you want to exchange for that, and actually document that and build that into the selling process. And the point being is you won't leak value every time you give something away. You'll be actually maintaining and what I call capturing value each time because you got something in exchange.
Makes sense. Total makes sense. I mean, I've been there. I remember once when I was first initially starting off, man, and it was they ran me through the ringer. I did everything that you were not supposed to do. They were asking about pricing, wanted to get the quote, wanted to get the pilot program, and I went to the executives and it's like, yeah. And 8 months later, the deal didn't go anywhere.
Right, and you told your boss it was moving because they were asking for all this stuff. So we always talk about in the sales process, you check the box. Yay, my deal's moving forward. It's at 40%. How do I know? Because they asked me for pricing. So, we're using the wrong metrics for progression in the deal cycle. It should be whether or not we got some of the things we need, not whether we gave some of the things they wanted.
Speaking about that, you mentioned also the idea of asking for more. I'm reading to say it exactly this time. I don't want to have any 40 slips. Ask for more than you are comfortable asking for. Like, is that like with the pricing, or what do you mean?
In that case, we're specifically talking about pricing. There's two pieces of research out there that kind of come together in this case. One is called first offers, and the other is called the anchoring effect. And what we are convinced, based on the research we see in the industry, not ours, and it's not best practice research, it's buyer side research. It's called first offer robustness, that the one who makes the first offer creates the anchor and by which the rest of the deal goes. So you want to make the first offer and anchor them high and then work from there, as opposed to them putting the first offer on the table and saying, I think this is what we can do or what we should do. Because you'll only be incrementally inching up from there as opposed to incrementally throttling down. And there's a lot of people in negotiations research that say he who speaks first loses. And absolutely not true in the academic research. I don't know if they have any data to back that up or just their own opinion. But the academic research says that regardless of deal complexity and geography, this is true across the globe, first offers, that person comes out better at the end. And what you need to do with that first offer is anchor them high, expand the range of reason. This all makes sense, but in the heat of the battle and the tension, we tend to forget these things and start getting hyper responsive because we want to keep the customer happy, as opposed to knowing the discipline of getting a good deal for our company. So first offers and anchoring effect linked to something we call expanding the range of reason. And we simply say those who ask for more get more. So ask.
Interesting. All right. So that explains why my wife keeps asking for more money, you know.
Well, it's anchoring you high, so that if she gets it out of her mouth first. But this is a truth that covers our entire lives, by the way. This is not just sales.
No, man, this is awesome. I love it. If there's one major takeaway you'd like listeners listening to this episode to walk away with, what's that one thing?
That people, I think, just believe that great sales conversations are just a gift set that people have, and they're either glib and effective or not. But we know through the decision-making sciences in terms of how buyers respond that you can actually develop conversation skills and construct your conversation content to purposely move people to and through a decision process in your favor and in an advantaged way by understanding how to make the decision-making science, the buyer side, in terms of how they frame value and make choices, make that work in your favor. So the truth is a great conversation is way more science than people think, and you can do it on purpose versus by accident.
Man, I love it. Great stuff today, man. I appreciate it. If any seller or sales professional, business owners out there listening want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So my company's called Corporate Visions, and there's a contact button. It's corporatevisions.com, one word, corporatevisions.com. And there's a lot of free videos and content there that they might want to check out as well, and then they can contact us there.
Perfect, man. We thank you so much for coming on the show today. We'll put all the stuff back in our show notes and link back to your website. But we really appreciate it, and I highly encourage anyone out there looking for your next book to check out this book here. It's going to definitely be a big help to you. I'll put all the information in the show notes and a copy so you can see what it looks like. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Donald. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate the great conversation. I appreciate a lot of the great insights that you offered us. And if you guys would like to get connected with Tim and learn more about his organization, as he mentioned, you can go to thesalesevangelist.com/episode 234. Again, this is the Sales Evangelist, Just go to salesevangelist.com/the word episode, the number 234 from episode 234. You can learn more about him. You can pick up on some of the great insights if you didn't get a chance to write some of them down. But we took some notes, and you can learn more about that and just get connected with him. I highly recommend this book. There's a link in there. It's an Amazon link. It's an affiliate link, so you can check that out. And also, you can check out the Audible link, where if you want to go and check out some audiobooks as well, you can check that out. All in all, I want you to be successful. I want you to be happy, especially, again, going into this time of the year as you plan for next year. I want to make sure that you're doing the things that's going to help you to become more successful. Sure, you've done your analysis for this year already. See some of the challenges that you had, some of the mistakes that you've made. Let's learn from them, and let's go forward and hustle. So as you go into new year, just remember, as always, I want you to go out and do big things.